The sun is setting over Lake Tahoe. Inside a $5 million mansion, a 70-year-old man is cooking dinner for his wife. They don't hear the footsteps behind them. In exactly 90 seconds, he'll be dead on the floor. She'll have 2 bullets in her skull. And the person who planned it all? Someone they'd just written a check to. Someone who sat at their dinner table. Someone who called them mom and dad. This is the story of how an ex-Major League Baseball pitcher went from packed stadiums to cold-blooded murder. How desperation turned into execution. And how one piece of surveillance footage would expose it all. Daniel Serafini had everything you dream about as a kid. Major League Baseball, stadiums full of screaming fans, money pouring in. He played in America, then Japan, where they treated him like a god. At 31, he thought this would last forever. But here's what they don't tell you about pro sports. The average MLB career, 5.6 years. Most players are done before they hit 30, and Daniel? He was about to fall harder than most. Help me prove my mom wrong. She thinks I can't hit 1,000 subscribers. If you like stories like this, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's show her that real people are backing this journey. 2007 routine drug test, positive for performance-enhancing drugs, 50-game suspension, career over. Teams stopped calling, his savings vanished. Bad investments drained everything. He opened a bar, it failed. The debt kept climbing, $14 million. His parents mortgaged their house to give him $240,000. Gone in months. His marriage collapsed. Everything he touched turned to ash. Then someone gave him a phone number. Her name was Erin Spoor, 19 years old when they first met. Horse trainer. Good family, really good family. Her parents, Gary and Wendy, had built a $23 million real estate empire. Multiple properties, including a $5 million lakeside mansion at Lake Tahoe. Daniel called Erin. They dated. Within months, they were inseparable. 2011, Hawaiian beach wedding. Sunset. Perfect. They moved into a $1.1 million home in Reno. From the outside, Daniel had clawed his way back from rock bottom. But there was a problem. Actually, there were several problems. Gary and Wendy Spoor did not like Daniel, not one bit. Their daughter had dropped out of dental school, which they paid for, to be with this washed-up pitcher. They even threatened to sue him for the tuition money. Eventually, they backed off. Erin seemed happy. She had 2 sons with Daniel. I say she ran an equestrian center. Maybe it would work out. But here's the thing you need to understand. Gary and Wendy paid for everything. The house, childcare, bills, Daniel's failed investments, check after check after check. And there was a prenup. If Daniel and Erin divorced, he got nothing. 0. Every time they wrote another check, Daniel felt smaller. Every family dinner was a reminder of how dependent he was. Every argument about money drove the knife deeper. Arguments became screaming matches. Emails turned verbally violent, as a judge would later describe them. And somewhere in Daniel's mind, a thought started forming. A dark, terrible thought. Samantha Scott was Erin's close friend. She worked as the nanny for Daniel and Erin's 2 young boys. She was in the house constantly, knew everyone's routines, every schedule, every vulnerability. Daniel and Erin had an open marriage. Both could see other people. And Daniel started seeing Samantha. What promises did he make her? What future did he paint? We know he told her about his problems, his debt, his in-laws. and eventually he told her his solution. Saturday morning, sunny, perfect California weather. Erin loaded her 2 boys, ages 3 and 8 months, into the truck. They drove to Lake Tahoe to visit Grandma and Grandpa. Gary and Wendy were thrilled. Since the boys were born, the relationship had improved. They spent the afternoon on the water. Gary took them sailing. The kids laughed and splashed. 3 generations, making memories. That afternoon, Wendy wrote Erin a $9,000 check. Just a week earlier, they'd given Daniel $70,000. The money kept flowing. As sunset approached, Gary went to cook dinner. At 7:45 p.m., Erin kissed her parents goodbye and headed home with the kids. Her headlights disappeared down the mountain road. Gary and Wendy were alone. But not really. Earlier that day, while the family was out on the lake, surveillance cameras caught something. A figure in dark clothing. Face hidden beneath a hood and white mask. Backpack on his shoulders. Walking deliberately toward the Spore residence. This wasn't random, and this person knew the house, knew the schedule, knew when Erin would leave with the kids. He hid somewhere inside or near the property and waited, hour after hour, listening to the family laugh, talk, enjoy their perfect afternoon. And when Erin's truck disappeared down that mountain road, he made his move. It took less than 2 minutes. Gary Spore, 70 years old, never saw it coming. It's like single shot to the head from behind. He collapsed near the fireplace. Wendy barely had time to process what was happening. She raised her hands to protect herself. 2 shots to the head. 1 through her hand. The weapon? A .22 caliber pistol with a homemade silencer. A plastic tube. Crude but effective. Neighbors heard a dull thud. Nothing that sounded like gunfire. Nobody called the police. The attacker slipped out into the darkness. Vanished. Gary was dead. Wendy lay bleeding on the bathroom floor. And here's the part that still haunts everyone. Wendy's dog found her, licked her face desperately until she regained consciousness, 2 bullets in her head. Somehow, impossibly, she reached for her phone. Dialed 911, but she couldn't speak. The operator heard gasping, labored breathing, then silence. When paramedics arrived, they found a scene that made no sense. Expensive jewelry untouched, Gary's Rolex still on his wrist, Wendy's diamond bracelet still on her arm. No forced entry, nothing stolen. This wasn't a robbery. This was an execution. Lake Tahoe hadn't seen a murder in 20 years. This doesn't happen here. Wendy survived. But the bullets had done their damage. She had to relearn everything. Walking, talking, eating. And she couldn't remember the attack. The one witness couldn't identify anyone. Detectives had surveillance footage of the hooded figure, but the mask made identification impossible. They interviewed everyone. Nothing. Erin's younger sister, Adrienne, became the public face of the case. Press conferences. $150,000 reward. But Erin and Daniel? Curiously absent. Detectives noticed something else. McDaniel's cell phone, normally buzzing with hundreds of messages daily, was completely off during the attack. Coincidence? In February 2022, the case went cold. 2023. Motel surveillance footage. Investigators found it buried in old records. Daniel and Samantha, together, the night before the murder, checking in, checking out. Digital proof they couldn't explain away. Daniel's alibi crumbled. Meanwhile, Wendy was falling apart emotionally. She suspected her own son-in-law. Worse, she suspected her own daughter might have known. On March 9th, 2023, Wendy Wood took her own life. She was 70 years old. But before she died, she did one final thing. She disinherited Aaron. Left her only half of the lake house. Even in death, Wendy was pointing a finger. October 20th, 2023. Daniel Serafini and Samantha Scott were arrested in Nevada. Hota, the former MLB star, was found living part-time in a trailer. The fall was complete. Both charged with murder and attempted murder, facing life in prison. And that's when Samantha's loyalty finally broke. February 6th, 2025. Samantha Scott pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against Daniel. Her testimony was devastating. She drove Daniel to Lake Tahoe, watched him test his homemade silencer, dropped him near the house, waited for hours, picked him up after the attack, helped dispose of evidence during the drive back. They'd even exchanged love letters in prison. Daniel fantasized about the life they'd build once he was free. 6 weeks of testimony. Prosecutors presented furious emails to his father-in-law. Verbally violent, the judge called them. A witness testified that Daniel had offered $20,000 to have Gary and Wendy killed the year he married Aaron. A mine foreman heard him say he wanted to kill his in-laws. That $70,000 check Wendy gave Daniel weeks before the attack. He used it to buy his dream car. Even Daniel's own brother admitted the hooded figure looked like Daniel. July 14th, 2025. Guilty. First-degree murder. Attempted murder. First-degree burglary. Special circumstances. Lying in wait and felony murder. Daniel awaits sentencing. It's been postponed to February 20th, 2026. 1 week after the verdict, Aaron filed for divorce. The two sisters are now locked in civil litigation over their parents' estate. Remember the hooded figure walking toward that mansion? That surveillance footage still haunts Lake Tahoe. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous person isn't a stranger breaking in. It's the person you invited into your home, the person you trusted, the person you wrote checks to. Gary Spoor loved sailing, loved his grandchildren, had scuba trips planned for his birthday. He never got to take them. Wendy Wood survived the attack only to be destroyed by what came after. The grief, the suspicion, the betrayal. And Daniel Serafini? He went from packed stadiums to a prison cell, from millions of dollars to murder. Here's my final question for you. Do you think Aaron knew? Drop your answer in the comments. What sentence do you think Daniel deserves? Life without parole? Or something else? Let me know below. And if you want more stories like these ones that'll keep you up at night, like, comment, and subscribe. See you at the next one.